Hello, one more time. I greet you. Welcome to another program in the series, Homo Politicus, in which we interrogate the never-ending issues thrown up by Nigeria. Today, El-Rufai meets SDP leaders for second time. Defection rumors fueled. Well, while it may be instructive to point out that although political defections are neither new nor unique to Nigeria, a defection in Nigeria is usually provoked by monetary gains and sometimes, some would say, banal complaints. The immediate past governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, is in the news. The erstwhile APC chieftain has had a closed-door meeting with the leaders of the Social Democratic Party, SDP. This would be the second time he'll be meeting with the SDP folks. The speculation is that El-Rufai is planning to defect, but a media aide to the former governor does not see anything wrong with politicians mingling and crisscrossing the landscape. If a defection is in the offing, the coming days would tell. But do politicians get redeemed by defecting? Let's interrogate that. My discussants are lecturer, business and political analyst, Mr. Ken Ikenwa. Ken, I greet you one more time.
Thanks for having me on.
He's joined by chartered accountant, public affairs analyst, Tumi Olawe. Tumi, I greet you.
Good morning, citizen.
Gentlemen, defections galore in my country. A defection is no longer news in my country.
Well, it shouldn't be. Because basically there is no ideology guiding political parties in Nigeria. So it's self-interest that is predominant. So if a politician feels that his interest is not being served by a particular platform, he will move to the next readily available platform. That would
Accommodate him
in actualizing his interest. So, really, since there is freedom of association, you can't hold the immediate past governor of Kaduna to ransom by him talking to SDP, if that's actually what he's really doing. Because if he looks at his own circumstances and he thinks that his interest is no longer being served in his current party, he's at liberty to move somewhere else.
Why not? Ken, to me, is not speaking for you.
Well, we live in very interesting times.
That time means souls.
And, well, I wouldn't say it's trying the souls of men. I would say it's speaking to the basic assumptions of political evolution. The country Nigeria, our democracy, our style of governance is undergoing a process of evolution. And I'm particularly...
Sorry, do you believe there's any such thing as a Nigerian-type democracy?
They obviously will be over time, because Nigeria is not America, Nigeria is not Britain, Nigeria is Nigeria. And Nigeria is a component of about 350 different nations. So over time...
But is a member of the Committee of Nations.
It's a member, yes, but I mean, not all nations have the same style of government.
Okay.
Or governance. And that brings us to the core of our discussion today, which should center around about 3 or 4 pivots. 1, political culture. 2, political participation. 3, political ideology. And 4, political party types. These are the 4 issues, the 4 pivots that we would use to explain what obviously now is emerging as what I will call El-Rufaism. Because all of a sudden somebody wakes up and wants to fashion a new idea, or like the narrative or the reportage is going, start a new movement or a new political party, simply because he or she has lost political relevance. And so it brings us back to the questions that, would leave us thinking of the legacy we're going to bequeath to the coming generations. And it has to do with what is our political culture.
Sorry, may I take you back a little? El-Rufai.
With all pleasure.
El-Rufai losing political relevance in your estimation?
Not just El-Rufai. So many of them we will now say are losing political relevance simply because they possibly maybe did not get one appointment or the other, or they are not playing the kind of role that was expected of them as a reward and compensation for bringing the present, president and the present government into power. So it comes down to those four pivots. What is our political culture? What should we term as political participation? What is the ideology? All right? What are the individual ideologies? What are the party ideologies? What is the collective ideology? All right? Of Nigerians, of Nigeria? And lastly, what type of political parties do we have in this country? And with what is on ground, with the structure that is on ground, how far can we go as a nation? That in Latin is what we'll call the principia petitio. These are issues that beg a lot of questions in our discourse this afternoon.
To me, a former vice president in this country is who you might call, I got the word before I entered here. He has defected a number of times. He's gone there, come back here, return to the place and come back and so on. But he remains a force to be reckoned with. So Ken is talking about a political culture.
Well, unfortunately, none exists so far. We used to have.
A political culture?
We don't really have a political culture. We used to have when we had the regions.
Okay.
You could identify the ideology of each specific political party.
Yeah.
And the culture that guides them. And you could see that they had mileage. They had results for what they believe in because they actually actualized it. But over time, with the long tenure of the military boys and the change, the fundamental change in the class of elites in Nigeria. Because you see, the elites are very important. They are fundamental.
So the military will still remain the fall guy here. The military.
Yeah, because they caused a whole lot of damage to the fundamental fabrics of Nigerians. And that happened in the 8 years of IBB. We had, then when you talked about elite, you're not talking about how much money you have in your pocket. We're talking about your antecedent and your pedigree. The things you've done, the value you've added to the society. So he came and he created a new series of carpetbaggers and destroyed people having antecedents, integrity, and pedigree. And when we finally transitioned to this democratic season that we are in, it was those emergency millionaires that had the funds.
The plutocrats.
Yes, to enter into our political space. And what was their own pedigree? It was make money without remorse, without any care, without any morals attached to it. And we've seen it played over time in the last 20-something years. So if we're talking about political culture, I think that is it. And it is that culture that has now even gone down into the fabric of the society. We must blow at all costs without showing working. So you're a politician, you were in position, you came back, you don't have a house, which were things that were common before. Your kinsmen will call you, waiting they do you.
Now only you.
Now only you. You know. So somebody created a new class of elites. And then the masses wanted to tap into it. Now your turn. Make good use of it. So that's why you will see us.
The turn may not come to us again.
It may not come to us again. And it's not even us, like the whole us. It's that particular us.
Yeah.
So when we now see politicians jumping all over the place, in the 60s, they were not jumping all over the place. You stick, even if we have one or two defections, it wasn't the norm. But now it is. And we have so many political parties. I call them SPV, special purpose vehicles, for anybody that is willing to use them. SDP is turning out to be an available SPV if El-Rufai wants to use it. We have two major parties.
But these are speculations, mere speculations.
But his own move is mere speculation. But that those mirrors other parties from the two major political parties, SPV, is not speculation. We've seen them being used time and time again.
Ken, the impression is created, rightly or wrongly, that politicians in Nigeria are becoming Machiavellian. Get it by any means or with any means. And the public is left, the supposed ruled is left in the lurch.
Well, very unlike me, I decided to dress like a politician today, to parody the politicians, so that I can try to get a feel of how they think and how the politicians think.
Are you there yet?
I don't know, cut me a slack. I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Maybe the next 10 years, maybe the next 15 years, I may decide to join the train, but not with the kind of culture that politicians actually do practice now. Because we have two categories of people that ply their trade in politics of nations. Those are the politicians, or those that my godmother would love to call politricians, and those are the statesmen. I think I want to be a statesman and not a politician. But let's come back to the subject matter. Politics and politicians are people that are friends. But we go further to say politics away from friendship could make friends become strange bedfellows. So when politicians begin to exhibit tendencies of the prince, of being Machiavellian, it shouldn't be any surprise. Because the culture that we're talking about, if we give it a definition, is a set of knowledge, behavior, values, attitudes, all right, that characterize the political atmosphere or space or arena of a particular country. But I choose to add interest, bringing us back to politics making strange bedfellows. And what does that mean in politics? There is no permanent friendship. There is just permanent interest. And so what we call defection in politics is what we call carpet crossing or cross-carpeting. It's not the first time that we're seeing it. It's not going to be the last. But it brings me back to somebody I used to listen to when I was a boy. And I'm sure you want to guess who that person is. I really don't dig him anymore. But he actually makes me believe that you don't need to be religious to be called a prophet. And that is Fela Anikbolapo Kuti. And Fela did say something. So let's take these problems that we are in to the origin, to the source. He talked about the colonial folks. I refuse to call them masses anymore. And he waxed an album, I think in 1980 or 84. He said, teacher, don't teach me nonsense.
Don't teach him.
So we went and borrowed this style of democracy. I don't know what happened to General Obasanjo. I don't know the influence of Jimmy Carter in 1970, between 1976 and 79, that made us move from the parliamentary system to a presidential system. But I also do not know why Jimmy Carter or America failed to tell. Fela said it. He said, why didn't Thatcher and others tell General Obasanjo that the elections that were conducted in 1979 were not the way elections are conducted in America?
Yeah.
And why is America not telling us now?
And that the military does not take over.
The military does not take over in Britain. So this antecedents, and I started listening to these things, from my boyhood days, 7, I started buying Fela's tapes at 13, 14, 15, and I threw away all those tapes at the age of 16. Don't ask me why. I will tell you that in private. But it doesn't take away the substance from what people like Fela the black prophet, has said about Nigeria, has said about Africa, and has said about the black race. So what we are seeing playing out in Nigeria today, and what will continue to play out until perhaps this generation of ancestors, of elders, fades off, is people pitching for their own interests. And that brings us back to ideology. Should we be after interest in Nigerian politics, or should we be after collective ideology that promotes economic advancement? Now,
And by extension, Ken, whose interest?
whose interest? It brings us back to the question of ideology. Because many people today that claim that they are progressives cannot. I can tell you, many of them today that tell you they are progressives. I'm not a politician, I don't belong to any political party, cannot define what progressivism actually means. So they are progressive because they're a member of a particular party. Many that will tell you they are Democrats are not practicing democracy as it is. They are practicing elitism or elitocracy or plutocracy as it is. So the issue of interest should facilitate between who should be the epicenter of interest, the people or the politicians. But I mean, the guess is as good as it's obvious out there. The politicians actually stake and stoke out their interest there, leaving the people to suffer from the bonds of their policies.
And to me, begs the question of whether Nigeria, our Nigeria, will achieve its dream of nationhood eventually.
Well, that's
$1 million question.
Yes, because the culture, the societal culture that we keep reinforcing now is moving away from what we want. You know,
And we are not in a hurry.
we're not in a hurry. You heard stories of people leaving their farm produce or market wares on their stall, put how much they wish to sell, then go do some other things, and people will come, okay, this is 2 kobo. Put your 2 kobo down, carry, and then go away. That was, and then we had the culture of communal living. Owe. It's called Owe in Yoruba. That is, farming season would come clear your farm for you, and then next, everybody would, that's how would collectively prepare for the agricultural season. So it was for the greater good. The culture then was for the greater good. It wasn't really individuals. But like I said, you know, the elites that were brought up by that culture were eradicated in the 90s. And they were replaced by journeymen that all they care about is how much they can take away from the collective, notwithstanding. And you see, in Nigeria, they've understand our psyche and like, look, everybody's waiting his turn because that's what it is now. So they will believe that because I'm from their stock, if I do this, despite the fact that the man is not dropping anything for anybody. So when the man is caught, he would come back and say, look, oh, they're after my life. The other guy from that other tribe did more than what I did. So, and then you see people saying, what has he done? So we might want to blame that Nigeria was amalgamated by the European, but they didn't take our brains away when they did. They didn't take our souls away when they did. Or intellect. So whatever we have today is what we have chosen to do. I mean, what was the level of education before Awolowo came? He could have decided just to line his pocket like our present politicians are doing. But most of the programs he did, we saw we are still living off the results of those programs.
And most of those are in power today were beneficiaries.
We are beneficiary of
those social.
But you see, when you replace...
Was Awolowo really a socialist? Was he?
Well, to a reasonable extent.
You want to help us here? Was he really a socialist?
Awolowo was a progressive socialist. Or we would say Awolowo was a pseudo-socialist. Or we would say Awolowo was a populist socialist. Because he believed that, like I quoted in the last episode of our program, he believed that you needed to take care of the interests of the people for there to be social solidarity and stability in the country.
I remember a statement like, the children of the poor who you neglect
that was
today.
A quote. I quoted that last week.
Yeah.
Would make it impossible for your own children, you the rich,
which is
to sleep in the future. And that's what we are seeing today in our country. Now, I bring back the issue to something you mentioned that is very substantial, away from these political jobbers and opportunities that are all over the corridors of power today. Because the idea of carpet crossing and cross-carpeting is all about political opportunism, which should be the fifth pivot of our discussion today. Political opportunism. So everybody's looking for an opportunity to be relevant, to control resources, to be there, to control men and to control means, as it were. Instead of looking at how we can begin to use the monies you have made from politics to set up factories, create jobs, to set up schools that people can afford, to give out monies to women, to start microcredit schemes. People, like Nigerian politicians, are taking money to Switzerland, to even Ghana,
is this fault?
to Dubai.
Is this fault African or the black man's fault?
It comes back to the question, what is the Nigerian dream? Is there a Nigerian dream?
Yeah, there's a Nigerian dream.
Okay.
So I'm taking over from you. You asked the question. Is there a Nigerian dream?
Yeah.
What does it mean to be Nigerian? When you talk about being Nigerian, is it in the same nomenclature? Is it in the same, personification of being American, being English? Something happens to one American, and you see the American government deploys the Marine Corps to go and get that single individual back.
Yeah.
Something happens to a Nigerian, and you see somebody in charge of the Diaspora Commission or something, saying a president comes out, or someone will say, our youths are lazy, our youths are this. So, what does it mean to be Nigerian? What is the Nigerianness in Nigeria that
to me, you might help,
Nigerian?
You might help us here as we begin to coast home. Is there a Nigerian dream?
Yeah, there's a Nigerian dream.
Okay.
And that Nigerian dream was bettered. The present, current Nigerian dream was bettered in the 90s. And I'll keep going back to that 90s because it distorted our society.
Otherwise, we had the opportunity of blowing.
So when you say the Nigerian dream was bettered in the 90s, I want to get you.
Was
so I can
distorted.
take it from. Okay, it was distorted.
Yes.
So what was the Nigerian dream ab initio before the 90s?
Hard work, succeeding by showing working.
So you agree with me that we're in a society now where people celebrate and venerate success without asking questions about the root of the success.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons why we're in the economic quagmire.
And that happened
and
in the
cultural
90s.
morass that we find ourselves today.
When, you see, the elites are like the toppings on the cake. Now inside that cake are the masses. They will, amongst the elites, is where you will get your leaders from. But the crop of elites we have now, check the source of most of their wealth.
Okay, just a minute. Before we rest this discussion, let me draw your attention to the new kid on the block, which is the Labour Party. Is embroiled in the usual...
Are you surprised?
I should be asking.
Because, look, you cannot plant corn and harvest cassava.
If El-Rufai eventually cross carpets, do we expect the new bride to be the SDP or...
No. We're just going to have the alignments of interest, that's all.
to set a foray on that issue. I mentioned 4 pivots that should be, the corner piece of our discussion today. We talked about political culture, we talked about political participation, ideology, and political party types. And I've added a 5th, political opportunism. So let's focus on the 4th, which brings up the question of the new kid on the block that you talked about. Now, there are 3 types of political parties. So let us begin to check the political parties we've had. The first political party in Nigeria was, I think, organized by Herbert Macaulay, the Nigerian National Democratic Party in 1923, if I'm not mistaken, exactly about 100 years ago. There are 3 types of political parties. One, you have the elitist or the personality-based or centered political parties. 2, you have mass political parties that involves everybody. And 3, you have special interests.
Which ordinarily should have been typified by the Labour Party.
Well, I will leave the public, to be the jury on that issue.
Okay.
And the third type of political party are political parties that are special interest political parties. These are political parties that are organized maybe around tribe, around religion, around ethnic biases and other biases, but are focused on particular social and economic interests. So, as we custom on the discussion, the question now should be, the political parties in Nigeria, are they personality-centered, my turn kind of political parties, or are they special interest political parties?
I hope you are not begging the question.
I'm not begging the question. I'm opening up a canvas so that we can have a continuous conversation that will lead the ship of Nigeria to a proper destination. Because if you say you are cross-carpeting or carpet crossing or defecting, if you are getting together all of a sudden because you have no more access, because your political opportunity has been circumvented, what should we expect? A special interest party or an elitist-centered, personality-centered party or a mass party? I think the bane of Nigerian politics and development has been we have had too many special interest parties that have disguised themselves as mass-centered, populist-centered parties, and that is why we have not made the kind of progress we ought to have made since 1963 that we became a republic.
And the public seems to be the victims there.
Why? Because there is a systematic arrangement to ensure that there is no enlightenment of the populace. And that, is spelled out with the degree of illiteracy and literacy that we find in Nigeria. And these indexes don't lie. Like I said on another station, I think on Tuesday, or last week, Friday, my professor told me, or the one with my apprentice, his name is Professor Ben Gojava, aka Big Ben. He did say, and taught me when I was learning under him, that figures don't lie. People tell lies with figures. So the illiteracy rate in Nigeria cannot lie. If you look at the illiteracy rate in Nigeria at 45%, look at the unemployment rate, the real unemployment rate, not the one that the new NBC whatever has given us. How can you tell me that in Nigeria unemployment is 4%? That's not possible. Look at the literacy rate, look at the unemployment rate, look at the poverty rate, look at the child poverty rate, look at the food insecurity rate. They all are within the same band. And then look at the rate of political apathy.
Yeah, Ken, but for me, statistics are no substitutes for judgments.
No, but at least they give us a leverage for which we can at least have a lens to think strategically.
And so I think we are educated and enlightened enough.
To me, the politicians...
The problem we have...
Educated and enlightened enough.
Yes.
55% level of literacy.
We are educated and enlightened enough.
As a country?
As a country.
Of 200 million?
As a country. The problem we have is that we do not like taking responsibility. Yeah. It's a major problem in this country.
How do I take responsibility when my life is at risk? Back again to fella. My papa did for house. My mama did for house. I'm not ready to die.
I'm not. When I say responsibility, it doesn't mean that you have to die.
For one man,
you don't have to die. You don't have to die, but you have to be responsible for your own action and contribution to this country. I'm not going to sit down and be waiting for a governor, a president, to determine how I want to live my life.
To me, I hear we must go now. The index finger of the producer is saying so. Ken, is it possible for you to bury the discussion in 60 seconds?
There is hope for this country. What we need is more communalism and collectivism. And what we need is more platforms like this for, the truths to be said and for people to start thinking. I think that we are moving in the right direction, and I beg to disagree with all ambers of war, ambers of distortions of our reality. I think we're in the process of evolution, and I'm sure that we would mature soon and get out of this rough.
To me, are we able to do it in 60 seconds?
Well, we need to change the mentality of our elites. I just hope it is possible that we get them supplanted with the right kind of elite. And that is when we'll start having change.
All right, so we'll rest, or if you like, we apply the anchor here, not before thanking Ken Ikenwa for your time, sir.
Always my pleasure.
To me, Olowa, many thanks too.
My pleasure.
Okay, the former Kaduna Governor Nasir El-Rufai, we understand, has met with the Social Democratic Party leaders, SDP leaders, for the second time. Are we to look at a defection coming? Are we not to? I dare say the coming days will tell. But until the next time, this is yours sincerely, Citizen Jones Hussein, saying bye-bye now.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.